heard some physicians talk about treating chronic UTIs kind of like peeling an onion. You've got to knock it down one layer at a time until it's able to recolonize to a healthy state.
Hi, welcome back to the Live UTI Free channel. My name is Melissa, and this is part 2 of our interview with Dr. Nicholas Sanford, the Vice President of Medical Affairs and Assistant Lab Director at MicroGenDX. We covered the different types of UTI testing in part 1. In this video, we'll discuss antibiotic resistance and how to interpret test results and treatment recommendations. We have a lot of information about UTI testing on our website, so we'll be sure to share some links in the video description. If you enjoy these videos and want to support what we do, be sure to hit subscribe and tick the bell so you'll be notified of our future videos. Thanks again for joining us on this journey to making change in women's health. Let's talk a little bit about antibiotic resistance. Can you explain the difference between the way in which MicroGenDX reports antibiotic resistance and the antibiotic susceptibility testing conducted as part of the standard urine culture?
Yeah, so ASTs or susceptibility tests are using cultured isolates to determine the susceptibility and the minimum inhibitory concentration. So they're predicated on having a positive culture first and foremost. Antibiotic resistance testing, or ART, uses PCR to detect known antibiotic resistance genes. So an AST is going to rule in treatments for you when cultures are positive. A resistance test is going to rule out treatments regardless of a culture result.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the big difference in how I explain, what they are is, resistance testing is creating a scenario of avoidance where, the AST is inclusion.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. The other question is, if it does detect antibiotic resistance genes, does that mean that antibiotic will not work, or that it just might be less effective than others?
Well, I don't know if I can really say. What we can say when it's detected is that we know it's there. We don't know if it's being expressed or not. I mean, it's certainly possible that it's not being expressed. Let's say you've got a quinolone resistance gene not being expressed, and then you throw a quinolone at it. Well, that quinolone might cause the gene to be expressed.
Right.
So I would say if you're going to be targeting something for which resistance is present, I would avoid those compounds.
Okay. A lot of people asked if you have any plans to implement susceptibility testing alongside the antibiotic resistance genes.
I don't think so. ASTs require that positive culture up front. Cultures are negative far too often. I think if we were going to, this is probably something we will do in the future, but we'll be leveraging whole genome sequencing data in order to predict these phenotypic sensitivities. So that's something that's still a ways off, but I think it will give us, AST-like information without the culture-dependent testing.
Okay. You might have answered this question already, sort of, in what you said, but are the antibiotic resistance genes detected and the recommendations that come from those ever tested alongside susceptibility testing so that you can compare how accurate they are?
So yeah, we still need to do some work there, but I think on the report you're referring to the antimicrobials for consideration. And that is data that is it looks a little bit like an AST, but it's not. What it's showing you is wild type sensitivities for the organisms we've identified. And those sensitivities are published in either the Hopkins or the Sanford guide. So that's not data that we're generating.
And in the case of polymicrobial infection, where an infection is caused by more than one organism, are the resistance genes detected a reflection of the group resistance or of each individual organism?
So because we're doing this two-part test to get an identification and the resistance profile, we can't physically link a resistance gene we detect to any specific organism. But we know that we need to in some form or fashion. So what we've done is correlated, certain resistance genes, the ones that we're targeting, with certain bacteria that they've been found in, and this has been established in the literature. You can see a table on the second page of our reports that shows which resistance genes corresponds to which, single species or which genera. So there's a table there that explains who goes to what.
Can you estimate what percentage of tests your lab processes that are polymicrobial infection?
Oh, I mean, the stark majority of them are going
Hmm.
to be polymicrobial. A lot of the research we've done in PJI and urology, even in nails, is showing that a majority of these infections are polymicrobial.
Hmm. Yeah, it's sort of a complicated topic, but it also shows the limitations of standard culture, where the results often just report one organism. And now we're seeing that that's unlikely to be the case for most people.
Hmm. And even repeated cultures. I mean, if the organism that's being missed is one of these that is unculturable,
Hmm.
maybe it's viable but not culturable. Maybe it doesn't grow on the media that we have available. I mean, you may never see it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an issue, I think, for a lot of people in this community, and probably one of the reasons people end up with this long-term recurrence because things are being missed.
I believe so. I believe so. I think it's better to have more information than less.
Mhm. Yeah, I think most patients would agree. When you do provide information on resistance genes, is that on all test results or only on those done within the US?
So the resistance gene testing is available everywhere. The antimicrobials for consideration are not.
Hmm. Which regions do you provide those recommendations for?
So we'll provide them in the U.S. As long as the sample comes with a clinician signature.
Hmm.
We don't provide them currently in the state of New York.
Okay, that's because of a difference in regulation.
It is. It is. New York is a CLIA exempt state,
Hmm.
and they have just slightly different regulations. But we are working with them, trying to get that included.
A lot of people have asked about whether in the future patients might be able to receive those antibiotic recommendations without a clinician's signature. Do you think that will ever be possible?
I don't think so. It's a regulatory requirement to mitigate patients self-prescribing outside the
Hmm.
guidance of a healthcare professional.
I figured that was the case. It's always worth asking, though. On to the results now. How long does it take for you to provide results once the sample has been received by the lab?
So our level one results are available within 24 hours of sample receipt at the laboratory, and the
Hmm.
level two NGS is available in 3 to 5 days. Our average on the NGS is 3.5 days. It
Hmm.
will sometimes go out to 5 days because we'll see something on the original 16S PCR, but the sample won't make the 1,000 reads to meet our threshold. So we'll
Hmm.
try running it again on a larger cell.
Hmm.
That's going to generate a lot more data, and so when we do that repeat testing, that's what can take it out to 5 days sometimes.
Okay, so just to clarify, level one is PCR and level two is NGS. Do
Correct.
patients receive level one while they're waiting for level two, or do you wait and send them all at the same time?
We send the level one out first because it's got the PCR information, and the PCR isn't just the resistance genes. It's also got some of the common organisms that we'll see in that
Hmm.
given sample type. So it provides kind of a rapid, preliminary result to show you here's some things that we've identified that are common uropathogens that you want to look at. Um,
Hmm.
and then the NGS, like we would love to have it come to you all at once very rapidly. And NGS just takes a little bit longer. And this is because the process, it includes sample prep, and there's a couple hours for that. And then once we get the sample on the sequencer, depending on the flow cell you're using, it can be up to 55 hours of sequencing
Hmm.
time. And then that's followed up by several hours of bioinformatic analysis. We are working to develop some metagenomic options that
Hmm.
we're aiming at a 24-hour turnaround time on that.
That would be great news for patients when that happens. Do the results indicate which organisms are considered to be pathogens versus those that are considered beneficial?
They do not. And I think the biggest reason for that is because we don't have patient history. We don't know if this patient is being tested because they, are trying to find out what's causing the infection, or if they're trying
Hmm.
to do a test of cure. So, we don't presume to know what this report is telling us.
Hmm.
Um, we leave that up to the physician to interpret.
Yeah, that does make sense from that perspective. How do you determine the low versus medium or high bacterial load?
So that's done with a PCR test. It's a 16S PCR. And what we're doing is just determining, low being less than 10 to the fifth copies per mil, medium is anywhere between 10 to the fifth and 10 to the seventh, and high is greater than 10 to the seventh. And what we do is with this PCR assay to figure that out is we run a bunch of standard curves for all kinds of different organisms. And we do this to try to account for the copy number variation of 16S, because we know that even within, species or between species, you can see different copies of 16S.
Mm-hmm.
So that bacterial load isn't absolutely quantitative, but semi-quantitative.
Okay. And is that really there to guide clinicians because they're used to seeing that kind of thing? Or do you think it has relevance to how they make their decisions?
I think it has. I think it is important to know. I mean, if you've got less than 10 to the fifth, it might still be something that you need to take a look at. But if you've got, greater than 10 to the seventh, that is, obviously a big red flag.
Okay. And do you see on some test results that there'll be a high bacterial load of something that is considered beneficial, like lactobacillus?
So that's a good question. I do know that on vaginal swabs, we see lactobacillus very frequently. Um, I don't know if we see it in a high bacterial load.
Mm-hmm. A few people asked whether good bacteria are just deliberately not identified because it's not part of the process, or if you think that they're just not there in most people that do this test.
Well, this goes back to what the test is trying to do. So in a microbiome test, you would expect to see all of those beneficial
Mm,
things there. But because we're trying to zero in on what's causing infection, we're looking at who's most abundant, who's most dominant. And everything that's falling under 2% relative abundance is getting thrown out, because these are things that are so low in abundance. They're similar in abundance to our reagent contamination.
so it's kind of just considered background noise.
Yeah.
Is it normal for bladder organisms to change over time and for test results to also therefore be different each time?
Absolutely. So, these changes over time, like we mentioned before, your diet, your health status, whether you have an infection or not, maybe you have an infection elsewhere in the body. Medications you're taking can alter this. Your environment can alter it. We know that it changes as a function of age. So we know that it's very dynamic over time.
And you mentioned it may be beneficial if you take a sample when you don't have symptoms because it might represent your normal urinary microbiome. But if that changes all the time, how can you ever know what's normal for you?
So I think if you were doing a test designed for monitoring the microbiome, it wouldn't be such stark differences from sampling event to sampling
Mm-hmm.
event. And this would, of course, depend on the frequency of sampling. Um, because we get asked about it quite a bit, we are in the very early stages of developing a new product, and it would be a microbiome test
Mm-hmm.
specifically for monitoring your various microbiomes over time. And you can use this, just to help with report interpretation later. When you do have an infection, you can see, who has suddenly shown up or who is out of
Mm-hmm.
balance all of a sudden. You could also look at it to see how you're, like, if if your diet is improving things.
Mm-hmm.
We there are some studies out there that say certain bacteria might be associated with colorectal cancer, and changing your diet can
Mm-hmm.
help push that in a different direction. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And as is our policy, we'll try to make that something that's available for as many sample types as we can.
Okay, yeah, well, you'll have to let us know when that becomes available. Another question on the changing urinary microbiome or changing test results. After someone does do a test with symptoms, how long are those results valid for? Because sometimes we hear from people who have their results and they can't find a clinician. It might take a month until they see someone that's willing to look at the results.
So I don't have an exact answer for that, but I certainly wouldn't act on a result that I've had in hand for, a week or two. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly wouldn't act on anything that was, collected before I had a course of antibiotics. Um, so I would recommend, having that physician or, some kind of prescriber lined up beforehand, and, let them know that this is the test I'm doing, and, so it's just so that they're ready for it.
Hmm.
Now, one thing that's happening, it's going to happen very soon. I think maybe this weekend. We've got a new website that's dedicated to patients. Our previous website was very physician focused.
Hmm.
And we did that because we want physicians to be able to understand what this test does, how it can help, and what the limitations are. But we get more and more requests from patients saying, can I buy this test? And for a long time, I think maybe we didn't do very much direct to consumer, simply because what are you going to do with this result
Hmm.
after the fact?
Yeah.
So part of trying to ameliorate that a little bit, we're going to be working with a telehealth company that is going to be able to treat based off of our reports.
Hmm.
So if you were to go to the patients.microgendx.com, order a test kit there, you'd have access to a telehealth service that could also act on your report for you.
Yeah, that's really helpful for patients. We can announce that once it's ready and share the link in the video description.
Absolutely.
So you touched on this already, but if there are multiple organisms listed on the results, is there any indication on the results which one could be causing the symptoms?
So no, there isn't, but you or your physician is likely ordered this test because you're experiencing symptoms of an infection. And typically the dominant organism on the report is going to be the offender, because it's out competing all the other beneficial bacteria, and your body's responding to that with symptoms. There may be cases where certain organisms are always treated regardless of their abundance. Like if you see chlamydia, that's going to get treated.
Hmm.
Um, there might also be cases where you see a few, 3, 4, maybe even 5 organisms there, and your clinician doesn't want to treat it. And that could be for various reasons, to include that those organisms might look like part of your normal microbiome.
Yeah, it's a complicated topic. It helps to work with a clinician who has a good understanding of it and experience treating based on these types of results. And we've been talking a lot about picking up many organisms, but does it ever happen that a MicroGenDX test is negative?
Oh, absolutely. We never know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, because we do get samples that are test of cure. But I think in terms of our negative rates for urine and semen, it's about 16% of the tests come back negative. And for vaginal swabs, it's about 1% negative rate. I think we've touched on it a little bit, but those negatives might occur because there's inhibitors in the sample. The organisms might be below the limit of detection, or the DNA is highly degraded.
Hmm.
Uh, sampling is also very important. If you didn't get any organism in the sample, then it's going to come back negative.
When that happens, do you recommend that people retest?
I think so. I think it's something to maybe discuss with your doctor, because NGS does have a very high negative predictive value, meaning
Hmm.
that if NGS is negative, then it's reliable. Now, the reason I say involve your doctor is because it could be, an issue with the sample collection. It could be maybe time of day. It could be some other etiology.
Hmm.
So these are things that we don't have information about. So that's something that you have to discuss with your doctor.
Okay. So looking at the report, can you explain the antibiotic recommendations and what the letters and the ticks mean?
Sure. So if we're looking at that antimicrobials for consideration, I said
Hmm.
that this looks like an AST. It is not. Those check marks are just indicating that, a wild type E. coli has been shown to be susceptible to aminoglycosides.
Hmm.
If you see, like, we've got information about gram stain and respiration on there. There is a key at the bottom of the first page of the report that shows you what all those abbreviations are. When resistance is detected, there won't be any check marks. Those boxes will be grayed out,
Hmm.
and the text will be highlighted in red. There will be an R for resistance there, kind of indicating to the physician, like, you want to avoid using this compound because resistance is present.
And the IV and PO letters underneath that?
So that is just the route of administration. So one is intravenous and one is oral.
And I see the antifungals listed at the bottom of that report page.
For this particular example, there was a Rhodotorula mucilaginosa detected. And for that, it has been shown to be susceptible to flucytosine and amphib.
So you do provide recommendations for antifungals as well. That's helpful to know. Can MicroGenDX provide a referral for a clinician who can interpret the results and prescribe appropriate treatment?
Yes, on the top right corner of our reports, there is a QR code you can scan,
Mm-hmm.
and it will take you to a page where where a physician can book a peer-to-peer consultation.
Okay, and if someone does have treatment prescribed, but then it fails to clear the infection, do you recommend testing again?
I believe so. We've learned, with these chronic UTIs, that sometimes they require a test, treat, test again approach.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because on that first round of testing, you identify a dominant organism, and then you successfully target it with some kind of intervention. But now, other organisms, which were previously kept in check by that dominant organism, they have room to fill the gap, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard some physicians talk about treating chronic UTIs kind of like peeling an onion.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to knock it down one layer at a time until it's able to recolonize to a healthy state.
Right. And some patients have indicated that they wouldn't mind paying out of pocket for this type of testing if they could be certain that it will help. Have you conducted any outcome studies to indicate what the success rate might be of using your test?
Sure. So we've, our CEO's been highly committed to research and showing the clinical utility of this test. And I think over the years, we've accumulated over 70 publications on the technology. As far as outcome studies go, we don't have a whole lot. They're big, complex, expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But we've done two that I like to talk about. One was published by McDonald et al. In 2017. And what it showed is that NGS-based treatments outperformed culture and sensitivity-based treatments, as evidenced by better symptom scores and higher detection rates.
Mm-hmm.
In 2023, we published another study that was looking at NGS-guided prophylaxis for patients undergoing lithotripsy procedures. And what that study showed is that NGS significantly reduced post-op infection rates
Mm-hmm.
from 8.5% to 0%. It also improved antibiotic selection, and it reduced healthcare-associated urinary infections. So those are two very good studies, I think, that really demonstrate the power of the technology.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that Michael List study in 2023 that looked at lithotripsy, it kind of blew us away, and it had a little bit of trouble getting through review because a lot of people have a hard time believing that there were no infections.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been the case.
There was in that paper, just in case anyone goes to read it, you will see a modified intent to treat analysis in that paper that
Mm-hmm.
shows NGS had an infection rate of 1.3%. That is because one patient did not receive the NGS recommended antimicrobials,
Right.
and they went on to develop an infection.
Yeah, that's an interesting study. We can also share the link to that if you can send it over.
Absolutely.
Some clinicians have issues with NGS and they say that it detects DNA from bacteria that has already died. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Molecular tests can certainly detect DNA from, dead organisms, non-viable organisms. Um, Cell-free DNA, though, is susceptible to degradation by nucleases. And we're using thresholds in our testing to prevent or mitigate the reporting of DNA coming from non-viable organisms. So
Mm-hmm.
those thresholds are the sample first has to make at least 1,000 sequencing reads. And then for anything to be reported from that mix of reads, it has to represent at least 2% of the relative abundance. And we
Okay.
find that does a pretty good job of filtering out DNA coming from those non-viable organisms or low-level sample contaminants. It is a little bit more pronounced in very low biomass samples.
Mm-hmm. There's one more question about antibiotic resistance. So people often say they don't have antibiotic resistance, it's not detected on tests, and then suddenly it will show up at some later point in time, and have asked whether antibiotic resistance can develop over time or diminish as well.
Certainly, antimicrobial resistance develops under the selection pressure of repeated exposure to antimicrobials. The disappearance of resistance genes can happen naturally. Cellular upkeep's expensive, and if it's not being exposed to something for a long time, it might say, I don't really need this anymore. But that said, in a clinical context where you're sampling maybe 2 weeks apart, a month apart, something like that, I think if you're seeing something disappear, it's more likely that some intervention has gotten rid of it. If you see something appear between sampling, it could be one of those scenarios where a dominant organism in the previous test was keeping it in check, that was treated, and now this new organism can proliferate.
Do you often see that with repeat tests, that the organism that was potentially the culprit initially has disappeared and something else is now a high bacterial load?
Oh yeah, yeah, we'll see that quite often.
Have there been any large-scale trials to compare sequencing PCR and standard culture?
Well, there have been a lot of studies of diagnostic accuracy comparing the three methods, and they mostly have the same outcome, and that's that the molecular methods are significantly more sensitive than culture insensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
But NGS kind of wins out because of the cultivation bias of culture insensitivity and the panel bias of PCR. The other thing, and what you commonly hear, the biggest objection to NGS is that it's going to report too many things, and these are going to
Yep.
be considered false positives. False positives are measured through specificity of the test. So if you look at all these studies of diagnostic accuracy, comparing them, there is no significant difference between the methods and the specificity of these tests. So culture has just as many false positives as NGS.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't surprise me. So let's move on to some of the practical aspects of the test. People had some questions about insurance and clinician adoption. So a lot of people have said that many clinicians are skeptical about testing beyond standard culture, which we know has many inadequacies, as we've discussed. But how are you, MicroGenDX, tackling this problem and raising awareness among clinicians?
So we have a national sales force that goes out and visits physicians at their offices and in the hospitals. We also, are working, we're working hard on social media, trying to get our presence out there. We attend all of the major medical conferences, and we do not just the major national ones, but we also go to a lot of local regional conferences as well. Um, I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do to reach the clinicians themselves is our research. So, we invest a lot in these studies, and I think right now we've got about 40 that are ongoing. So that's what we really try to do, is just not just reach out to them and say, hey, we've got this cool test. We like to reach out and say, we've got this cool test and here's some data about it. You can find a whole lot of information on our website. I also like to encourage, all of my friends and family, like if you go to your doctor for an infection, ask them, if they know about NGS first of all. I think a lot of physicians are starting to become more familiar with it. COVID helped in one way, in that everybody now knows what PCR is. So I think we'll start getting there to where there is a little bit more understanding of what the test is, how it works, because this is something that's still not really even taught in med school.
Yeah.
So it's new to a lot of people, and changing medicine is difficult.
It does take a long time. And I mean, that's another question too, changing insurance companies. Can you provide any insight into whether insurance companies do cover MicroGenDX testing?
Yes, we are covered by Medicare, and our PLA code is on the Medicare fee schedule as payable code. We do have a team working to get that PLA code added to as many other fee schedules, so it's covered by as many insurers as possible. Um, we're reaching out to insurance companies now and giving them a copy of the IDSA guidelines that are now recommending NGS for a lot of infection types, to try to combat this denial for it being investigational or experimental.
Yeah, I think that's a really important step to take. A lot of patients can't access testing just because of the cost and because of the lack of insurance coverage. So it's a big deal.
Mhm.
Are patients able to get in touch with MicroGenDX if they have questions about their results or specific questions about treatment options?
Absolutely. We have a very knowledgeable customer service team that can answer just about any question you throw at them. And if for any reason they can't, the call will get escalated to me or someone else in the technical staff to go ahead and answer that for you.
Okay, that's great to know. And we got some questions about international shipping and testing. Some of this information is on our website, but I thought it would be worth covering while we have you. Is it possible to order MicroGenDX testing outside the US?
It is. Our testing is currently available through labs in the UK, Canada, and Peru. And we're in the process of establishing labs in Germany, Brazil, and Dubai. Um, at the moment, we're not shipping to China, excluding Hong Kong, Africa, India, Russia, Ukraine, and Hungary.
Okay. And when you say you have labs in those other countries, does that mean the samples do not get shipped back to the States?
Yeah, they're going to be processed. It's a little bit, it's set up differently in the different places. So some of it comes to us, some of it is an actual facility being set up there so
Okay.
that it won't have to ship as far.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think eventually the idea is to have a few labs are located around the world to mitigate the shipping time.
Yeah.
And they would all be Microgen labs, or it would be a lab that's licensed our technology. And when we do that, we will go send a team to train them up,
Mm-hmm.
show them how to run our test basically.
Yeah.
And usually the analysis is something that would be done over the cloud.
Okay. I mean, that will make a big difference to patients if they don't have to pay international return shipping.
Absolutely.
How does that work at the moment, though, for samples that do need to be returned from international regions? Do you provide instructions and a way for patients to just organize that through your website?
Well, a little bit. So patients can choose their own carrier for return shipping. We found that FedEx may not be the best option in some countries. Uh,
Okay.
we do provide customs documentation, and Canadian patients still have the option of purchasing a return FedEx label. Um, I must say that we're not responsible for any delays or issues at customs.
Yeah, I think that could be an issue in multiple countries. And we did get a few questions from the UK about whether MicroGenDX may be covered under the NHS at some point in the future. Is that something that you're working on or will ever be possible?
That would be great, but we
Mm,
haven't had any of those discussions so far.
okay. And the same for the Canada public health system. Will it be covered under that at some point?
I don't know. Again, we'd love it to be, but it's not a discussion we've had yet.
Are you aware of any insurers outside the US that cover MicroGenDX?
I am not.
Can you provide any references for patients to share with insurance companies that deem the test as investigational and therefore won't cover it?
Sure. We have a section on our website that's dedicated to insurance denials.
Okay.
So we have our CMS approved PLA code, which means that Medicare Part B or traditional Medicare covers our test. Calling the test investigational is just a way for insurance companies to get out of covering the test.
Hmm.
Medicare Advantage plans are supposed to follow CMS guidelines and cover the same tests as traditional Medicare. They choose not to. Patients have been successful in fighting the Advantage plans and getting coverage, and we provide
Okay.
all those tools on our website.
And a few patients asked if they can just help in general with getting insurance companies to cover this type of testing.
Absolutely. Write to your insurance company and demand that they cover your test. Tell them about your journey of suffering and how many cultures have you had done? How many antibiotics have you taken?
Hmm.
You can also go to change.org and sign Carrie Ann's petition.
Yeah, we'll definitely put that link in the description. Well, that brings us to the end of our questions. I wanted to thank you again for sharing your time with us to get them all answered.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope part 2 of this interview provided you with new insights about UTI testing. If you'd like to learn more about this or related topics, be sure to check out our other videos or head over to liveUTIfree.com for more articles related to this video. We'll also add some links in the description. If you like what we're doing on this channel, be sure to hit subscribe and tick the bell so you can be notified of our future content. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep asking questions and pushing for better solutions.